I wanted to have the pleasure here this evening of speaking with Professor Dershowitz and with Bernie Marcus and hearing their opinions on what's going on here on the campuses. And I wanted to start off with a question to Alan that just kind of understanding the characterization of this issue. You know, we see that this is an issue, some people say perhaps we're exaggerating the problem. How do you understand the nature of this problem and how serious it is facing the Jewish people today?
Well, first, thank you, and thank you for this spectacular film. It really encapsulates and captures what I see every day when I speak on college campuses, not only in the United States, but around the world. Today is a very special day in America, Martin Luther King's birthday, and I'll never forget Martin Luther King coming to Harvard University when I was a junior professor and expressing his Zionism and his firm belief that when you talk anti-Zionism, you're talking anti-Semitism. And this is from the leader of the civil rights movement in America. I want to begin by pointing out one group of people that you didn't see in this film. You saw anti-Israel professors, many of them. You saw anti-Israel students. You saw pro-Israel students. You did not see pro-Israel professors. And let me tell you why that's so serious. Every major university has pro-Israel professors. And with a few exceptions, they are absolute cowards. Let me tell you how I know that. Whenever I speak on university campuses, and I speak all over, I get a phone call that afternoon or the next day from 4 or 5 professors at the university. And the phone call goes like this: thank you, Alan, in a whisper, for speaking out on Israel's behalf. And I say, the reason I was invited is because you won't speak out on Israel's behalf. Why are you silent? You speak out in your synagogue, you speak out in your country club, you contribute to the UJA, you contribute to the JNF. Why are you silent? Why, when Columbia University wants a pro-Israel speaker, they have to go to Harvard? Why, when Yale wants a pro-Israel speaker, they have to ask me? Why, when Michigan wants a pro-Israel professor, I'm the only one there? Erwin Cutler, Elie Wiesel, who's now getting old, but I'm the one who gets called on. Because I have to tell you, in 50 years of teaching at Harvard, at Stanford, at NYU, at Yale, I have never met a less courageous group of people than pro-Israel professors with tenure. They are gutless, they have no courage, they do not use their tenure. Why? Let me tell you why. Because they get punished. Their student evaluations go down. Story that happened to me. When I started speaking on behalf of Israel, I was the top-ranked teacher at Harvard Law School. My evaluations were always #1. When I started teaching, never teach about Israel, it's outside the classroom. The classroom is sacrosanct. One must be totally objective. But when I started speaking and becoming identified with pro-Israel attitudes, the student evaluations went down dramatically. What happens is the group of radical students would get together. You get ranked from 1 to 5. And about 20 of my 100 students would give me 0, 0, 0 on everything. On my teaching skills, on my knowledge of the subject. And the dean called me in one day and said, I see what's going on. I said, why do you see what's going on? He said, I looked at your evaluations, and you get a 0 for accessibility outside of class. And everybody knew I was the most accessible professor. I took every student to lunch. Every student was invited to our home for dinner. My wife is here with us tonight. She took the burden mostly of that, but we had every student for dinner. We had students over the house for our Passover Seder, for our Yom Kippur breakfast. So I was the most accessible professor to students, and I got a 0, 0, 0, 0 for accessibility outside the classroom, and that became very clear what was going on. I was being punished for my pro-Israel advocacy. I was excluded from the American Academy of Arts and Sciences because of my pro-Israel advocacy. I was denied, believe it or not, an honorary degree at Brandeis University. The president of Brandeis called me and said,
Say his name. What is his name?
Yehuda Reinhardt.
He's
You
out.
bet your life.
No, let me tell you what happened. He
Great
called me and he
advice.
asked, no, it's the opposite. Well, he called me and he asked me, would you be willing to accept an honorary degree from Brandeis? And I said, of course, it would be my great honor. Called me about 2 weeks later, and he said, Alan, I just can't do it. Graduations are about the students, not about protests. And I was told that if you got an honorary doctorate, Professor Gordy Feldman, Jewish professor, would lead a campaign against you and there'd be demonstrations. And so I don't care. I have more honorary degrees than I can hang on my wall. Do I care if I'm in the American Academy of Arts and Sciences or if my student evaluations go down? But imagine an assistant professor or an associate professor seeking tenure who wants to speak out for Israel. They're terrified. They just won't do it. And that's why the students have been so brave and so strong. And that's why organizations like Jerusalem U stand with us, Camera on Campus, all of these great grassroots organizations are so necessary on campus because the students have no faculty support. You occasionally get a strong voice, Larry Summers. What do you call a president of a university who was strongly pro-Israel? You call him an ex-president of the university. He lost his job in large part because of his pro-Israel attitude. That sends a message to people all over. And so that's why we need you. What I tell when I speak on college campuses, I look at the students and I say, you are not the university. I look at the faculty and say, you are not the university. You're temporary people here. The university is a community, and it includes alumni, and it includes donors, and it includes outside people. And we have to get together and use every resource available to us. I'll just make a couple of more points. Let me tell you what happened a few years ago when they tried to invoke an academic boycott against Israeli professors. I called my friend Steve Weinberg, who won the Nobel Prize in Physics in 1977, I think, and I said, we have to do something about this. You and I both have doctorates from Israeli universities that they want to boycott. Why don't we write a letter? And he asked me to draft it, and I did. And the letter said, we are Israeli professors for purposes of any boycott. If you boycott Israeli professors, you boycott us. So the two of us signed it. We sent it to 100 or 200 of our friends, and we asked them to circulate it around. By the end of a month, we had 11,000 American university professors who were willing to say, we are Israelis for purposes of any boycott. And that's an extreme situation. And mostly they were very, very senior professors. We also got 200 presidents of universities to do that. By the way, that was 10 years ago. I don't know whether that would happen today. I don't know whether we get 11,000 professors being willing to sign on to say we are Israeli professors for purposes of any boycott. My point is, we need your help. If you're a graduate of Harvard, you're as much Harvard as any professor and any student. If you're a graduate of Michigan, if you're a graduate of Tufts, if you're a graduate of Emory, you are part of the university community. Do not let this temporary group of professors and students destroy what universities have spent centuries building up. Academic integrity, academic freedom, the freedom of expression. Because what we're seeing on college campuses today is the death of academic freedom, the death of free speech. When I spoke at Johns Hopkins a month ago, I was accused, before I said a word, I was accused of harassing the students. Why? Because I wouldn't publicly acknowledge that Israel was a war criminal state. That is, my silence constituted harassment. And the students stood up and walked out of my speech saying I was denying them a safe space because I was supporting a country that was war criminal. They don't care. And then they painted a Hitler mustache on my picture, and also, they were threatening. I had to have armed guards. Whenever I speak on university campuses, I need armed guards to protect me because there are threats to my life, there are threats to my physical safety. And these are the students that have the chutzpah, the nerve, to say, we want safe spaces for our ideas. We don't want microaggressions. We don't want people challenging our ideas. Mommy, Daddy, Dean, protect us from dangerous ideas. If you want to be protected from dangerous ideas, don't go to college. If you want to be protected from physical intimidation, you have the right to demand that the university give you that protection. So we have a real battle on our hands. And organizations like Jerusalem U are doing a great job making the case that professors are generally afraid to make. So we really need your support, and I thank you for it.